The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to Sarah's Country for your Wednesday, wherever you are watching or listening to us live across the world on the World Wide Web. That makes us so accessible for shows like this to expand to reach you wherever you are, however you want it, and what you are looking for. I'm your host, Sarah Perium, and if you are new to the show and checking us out for the first time, a big kia ora and welcome to the community that cares deeply about the future of New Zealand's food and fibre sector. Of course, we strive here at the bottom of the world in paradise to being the very best in the world and taking people forward on this journey with us as well. We call it kaitiakitanga, guardianship and custodianship. Of course, the environment is in harmony with our people. And of course, we look to do that with open minds and open hearts here on Sarah's Country. I do need to let you know on a public service announcement, this show is a pre-recorded show. I do have to be open and transparent about the fact that I can't be in two places at once. I have tried. It's not physically possible, though. Other commitments have pulled me away to Wellington. So I still have a great lineup, no doubt, for you on this show, as you've become accustomed to. But I won't be able to take any of your live questions and comments throughout the show. So don't think I am ignoring you, because, of course, it's pre-recorded. And we are going to be back live on Monday. And if you have missed the news, we have shortened the delivery of Sarah's Country to deliver more punch from less to 3 days a week. All your news daily on farmersweekly.co.nz though. So, who have we got coming up in the show tonight? Global news that there have been traces of glyphosate found in New Zealand honey is prompting concern for our high-value manuka industry. We will get an update from 720 from the CEO from Apiculture New Zealand, Karen Koss, as well as celebrate the Innovation Award at Field Days, the win of HiveSight. It's an automatic chemical-free varroa mite application technology. We're going to talk a bit of politics in the bee world and celebrate a great win for Manuka with the iwi's acceptance and agreements to fight globally collectively together with the sector around the intellectual property of the Māori term Manuka. An interesting number of farmers are turning to alternatives to traditional pathways of farm ownership as banks tighten lending criteria. There's a lot of opportunity in the sector with the lessening of foreign ownership, and Rabobank National Farm Ownership Operations Manager Brent Irving's going to join us after 7:30 to discuss how we can get more young people into farm ownership positions. To close the show, always popular on Sarah's Country, the issue around the tahr cull. It has proceeded onwards despite that High Court injunction and those hunter protests of over 1,000. They have proceeded into the national parks and potentially set to go on to Crown pastoral leases next. Willie Dooley, the Tahr Foundation spokesman, is going to join us after 7:40 on an update of how that is playing out. But first up on Sarah's Country, after the break, two island nations, despite being on opposite sides of the globe, New Zealand and Ireland have long connected on many things. But of course, a shared focus on innovation and a continuation to push boundaries in the agri-tech sector is something we'll be discussing tonight with Gail Hendricks from Field Days. All that up very shortly on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits.
Children. Chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help your farm,
Grow, milk, drench,
Rear. Come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Well, this story to kick us off for tonight's show will appeal to our Northern Hemisphere audience, just as much as my producer Joel. The New Zealand and Ireland, two island nations, despite being on opposite sides of the globe, have long been connected with a shared focus on innovation, and both continue to push boundaries in the agri-tech sector. There's a very special relationship that has formed between the New Zealand National Field Days Society and Enterprise Ireland that has been brewing for some years and has led to an innovation awards similar to ours here at Field Days as part of the Irish Ploughing Championships. As well as participating, agri-tech innovations have been a part of each other's awards. And to join us now from Field Days is Gail Hendricks, who is the event manager responsible for the Innovation Awards at Field Days, to tell us more about how we are learning and growing together as two countries. Gail, both countries certainly excel in pasture-based farming to deliver quality food exports around the globe. How have New Zealand and Ireland's shared vision for the innovative solutions for the farmer compare?
Oh, hi, Sarah, and thanks for having me. Yes, I think you're right. Because we are pasture-based nations, there's an amazing opportunity for us to share and to work collaboratively together. So being a northern-southern hemisphere situation, what our innovators and their innovations are able to do is to trial and test the innovation here and work with the market here in the southern hemisphere, and then they're also able to go over to Ireland and test the market in that time of the year in that northern hemisphere. So it does give them a longer testing time, and it also gives them further insights into, I guess, what's possible over there after they've had their experiences and such here.
How did that partnership firstly come about?
Well, 6 years ago, when I first started here at Field Days in the Innovation Centre, I was visited by Enterprise Ireland, and they talked to us about what we were doing here with our awards program and how they might adopt a similar program over there. So we sat down and shared everything and had great conversations around what that might look like. And then they just went from there. I was fortunate enough to be sent over to Ireland in 2018 to have a look at what they were doing and how their awards program was working. And yeah, it was fantastic. They had great participation and some really fantastic innovations that were coming forward and through that program.
So then it's developed on to New Zealand companies participating in the Innovation Awards over there and vice versa. How have you grown that into an international awards as part of even this particular year as well?
Yeah, what we decided to do last year was offer an opportunity for one of our past winners who was looking to or was working in the Irish market, an opportunity to go over there and be part of those awards. So we piggybacked on a program that Callaghan Innovation was putting together, and they went over there together and participated in those awards. And so it gave Zero Harm Farm, which was the name of the company that we sent over, a great opportunity to experience Ireland and to, I guess, test the market. And such we have as well with the winners this year being Magro, given them an opportunity to come over here and do the exact same thing through our awards program.
And Magro is a patented technology associated with the waste in pesticide applications. It's fantastic, and you can check them out, of course, on the Field Days website a little bit more about them. Earlier in the week, Gail, we had Andrew Cook from Reserve Systems, who's one of the judges in the Innovation Awards on the show, and he was going over some of the winners. Can you tell us a bit more about it from your perspective as an event organizer, and how, you know, we're seeing a sort of potentially different type of innovations coming through?
Yeah, I think this year, the innovation really was putting on the Field Days online platform. That was a fantastic feat for us, which we were really pleased with, and really pleased with how the Innovation Awards in particular came came through. We were able to judge differently. It was all done through Zoom, like we're doing today, and then even the awards ceremony itself was very different in that we had video content of what those winners looked like, rather than them standing in in a marquee down here on site, shaking hands with our judges and sponsors. So that in itself was quite interesting. But over the years, back to your question about what we've seen and the changes that have come through, a lot of our innovations were around fencing and different types of gadgets and widgets and things that you could twist and turn. But over the last few years, we've moved on to apps. So there was a couple of years where we had a number of apps ranging from health and safety to tracking animals to managing your farm in terms of finance. And so now we've found the last couple of years, particularly this year, we've seen an increase in environmental innovations, particularly around water. We've had 2 this last year with Riverwatch and Water Watch Live. And last year we had an entry from Gallagher's as well. And so they all look to manage water, ensure that we're not wasting water, testing water, and how we can best utilize it.
And you did say you have been involved in it for some time as well. What's one of sort of your proudest mum moments of watching them go from early startup to where they are now, from some of those earlier days when you started?
Yeah, I think we've talked a bit this time round about Ayla Hutchins from Kindling Cracker, and she started just when I was or her innovation came on board just when I had started, and she was a very young girl, and her innovation has gone on to have huge success. And I think, the youth, that's really something powerful for us. But for me, I think I've seen the journey of Trusty Tuber, which is produced by Antahi, and they've been with us now for a few years, and they won our Launch NZ Award this year. And it was great to see them do so well and to see them go on and win other awards within New Zealand and have such success. They're a great couple, and they were very passionate and enthusiastic about the event, and also, of course, about winning the awards.
And later in the show, we're going to be catching up with Karen Koss, the CEO from Apiculture New Zealand, and I'm looking forward to talking to her about this hive site. And that looks fantastic, chemical-free varroa mite treatment. So, a wide range of fantastic innovation coming out this year in particularly challenging times. And can I say on behalf of everybody watching and listening, congratulations on a massive feat of pivoting and innovating yourself as an event. You must be extremely proud.
Yeah, no, I am. It's been a great team effort and really fantastic to have the platform up and operational and running, and some amazing content this year. Don't get me wrong, I look forward to the physical event next year and having our innovation awards in a nice chilly tent in the middle of July. But for this year and this particular event, it worked out really, really well. And I think everyone was able to benefit from the platform. So thank you.
Oh, fantastic. It's Gail Hendricks, an event manager in the Innovation Awards area at Field Days, and look forward to the hybrid event that they are proposing for next year, all the learnings from the virtual event, and hopefully back to the physical site there at Mystery Creek. Now, coming up in Sarah's Country, as I mentioned, we will be speaking to CEO for Apiculture New Zealand, Karen Koss, not only on some innovation in the hive site award, but also to this story around 20% of Manuka honey has got traces of glyphosate in it. How is that so, and what does that do for our consumer perception? And also we will just be catching up generally around the politics that is within the bee industry. All that soon on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
So if you missed the start of the show, we are fully pre-recorded tonight as I have to attend an event. So if you are sending in the comments, I do really appreciate them. I just won't be getting them as this is playing out live, but it was pre-recorded on Tuesday. So, yeah, absolutely. We'll be back next week with a live show, of course, on Monday to Wednesday from 7 p.m. Sarah's Country, is available on podcast and on Farmers Weekly's YouTube channel to watch and listen back on demand. Now, the Ministry for Primary Industries has found the chemical glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in products like Roundup, in 20% of honey sampled recently across the country. Manuka, for hundreds of dollars a jar overseas, is this sort of news is harmful to our honey industry. Joining us to discuss this and, of course, some more positive news around great innovation in honey is CEO for Apiculture New Zealand, Karen Koss. Good evening, Karen, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah. Nice to be with you.
There's been a lot of activity across the board, but let's start with this news. I actually took a gasp when I heard it on the radio on Monday morning. Is it of grave concern?
Look, of course, it's of concern to our industry, to our beekeepers, to our sort of processors. But look, we are aware of this issue, and beekeepers and processors are increasingly aware of how to manage the issue as much as possible as well. So, for example, beekeepers will be regularly talking to their landowners, to farmers, about spray timetables, about making sure they can move the boxes or just be aware of when spray's happening so they can manage the risk. And equally, a lot more of our honey processors and our market producers are now just testing for it and just undertaking really rigorous testing to check in and make sure that it's not prevalent and it's not it's not there in the honey. But it's a wider issue than just beekeepers. It really is quite a big issue for us to manage.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I really wanted to highlight it on the show, so that our hill country and high country sheep and beef farmers, particularly watching Sarah and listening to Sarah's Country, can actually take this on board. Because we were discussing in the editorial meeting Farmers Weekly on Monday about an assumption that a lot of hives are far away from places where there would be spraying programs, but not so much.
It's particularly true with Manuka. A lot of our Manuka hives are actually helicoptered into remote areas where, frankly, there wouldn't be any pesticides, you wouldn't be seeing any residues around the place. But we also have a thriving industry that's grown, and there's hundreds of thousands of hives around the country. So there are going to be times when this happens.
Absolutely. I would love to get on to the Innovation Award winners at Field Days, and one of them included a company called HiveSight. This is automatic chemical-free varroa mite treatment. I thought that would be a nice segue away from glyphosate. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? You must be so proud of this type of innovation.
Look, I think that's a really wonderful innovation, and we were excited to see this. And it's really about looking at alternatives to chemical treatments to varroa, and it's looking at the hive and the heating processes in the hive. So it's got some very good science behind it. It does need to be tested, but anything that helps us, I guess, lessen the need for treatments, for varroa treatments, and that's less cost for us, for the industry. We're really excited about it, and we're looking forward to seeing how the experiment and how the innovation will go. So there's a bit of time in it, but I think it's a great innovation.
I do have to bring up with you the story that was on Farmers Weekly, which is showing a bit of tension between yourselves and New Zealand beekeeping. What seems to be going on there?
Look, I think it's, we've got an industry that's growing rapidly. We've got Apiculture New Zealand as the national body, peak body that's set across not just beekeepers, but processors, marketers and suppliers. And so you still also have some of the smaller organisations around that, like New Zealand Beekeeping, which are focused on the smaller beekeeping operations. So I think with the growth of the industry, where things have headed, there is always going to be a little bit of tension. But, that's not to say we don't work together too. So we are working together on some new research opportunities, and also just on some issues that we're working together with, for example, verification, better audit systems with MPI. So, yes, there's a bit of tension at times, but ultimately I think we have the best interests of beekeepers at heart, and that should always be our focus, and it certainly is APNZ's focus.
Excuse me. And from a representative body, how is things going with regards to our intellectual property for Manuka overseas?
Well, that's very exciting. There is a new charitable Manuka charitable trust that's set up, that's being developed and set up by iwi. Industry is involved in the trust, obviously supporting the trust, and they're actually launching tonight at Parliament, so we'll be going to that function. But that's an important milestone for us to absolutely protect the term Manuka coming from New Zealand, a great milestone, and we're really excited about the potential for that. It's a long road to hoe though, trade certification, it's a big job, and I think we've certainly got the right groups and everyone around it supporting it.
Fantastic. No, some great news happening there, and of course some challenges as always, but I'm sure running an industry body, there's also a developing amazing market that's growing, and you should be super proud of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. As Karen Koss, the CEO for Apiculture New Zealand. And as I said earlier, this is a fully pre-recorded show, so I'm sorry I can't take any of your questions to our guests this evening, and of course we will be back on Monday. But coming up, we have a couple of fantastic interviews to get through. Brent Irving, National Farm Ownership Options Manager, with some great advice to both retiring farmers who don't have sons or daughters to hand it down to, and would like to hold on to owning some of their land, with equity partnership opportunities, as well as if you're a young person looking to get into farm ownership, what are some of those things that you should be thinking about, and how do you go about being paired up with a suitable equity partner? All that from Brent Irving from Rabobank next on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Well, an increasing number of farmers are turning to alternatives to traditional pathways to farm ownership as banks tighten lending criteria. But how do we create pathways for young farmers to achieve this ownership that doesn't leave them heavily in debt? Now, joining us to discuss is Rabobank's National Farm Ownership Options Manager, Brent Irving. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. That's a mouthful, that title, isn't it?
Yes, well, I suppose you got to design your own title, but it covers it all. And of course, you've been in the game for a while now. 100+ deals in the equity partnership game. Are you starting to get a bit of a formula?
The key formula is don't expect every deal to be the same and have an open mind. I think that's the formula, just to keep an open mind and listen to what the parties want, so that you've got you're aligning their strategies and goals, and not to try and stick to a formula, because that's when it tends to fall apart, really.
Of course, the average age of New Zealand farmers is somewhat like late 50s, early 60s, around Bob's age. How do older farmers create that gradual exit strategy while retaining a foothold and some steady income as they move into retirement, not suddenly?
Well, I think the good thing now is farmers are talking about it earlier, and I suppose, and a lot of them are quite happy to actually retain some ownership in land. And especially when we've gone through these economic turmoil, land's been seen as quite safe. So they're seeing what can be done with some different farm ownership options. They're talking to their professionals and banks and so forth, and planning for that. And they're asking and keeping an eye out for some younger farmers that might be prepared to step up. And rather than potentially sell the whole farm, they're actually more inclined to look at other options compared to what they probably did 20 years ago, where the option was either to hand it down to a son or a daughter or sell it. And so they're probably just a bit more open-minded and willing to look at options.
Seeing here in Canterbury the rise of lease blocks that are struggling to move with the sort of lack of foreign capital coming in, why not lease versus an equity partnership?
Well, I guess leasing is still a good option, and if it's practical, and it's about just keeping that option open. But the idea sometimes is that someone might sell 2/3 of their property and lease 1/3 of it, or they might lease 1/3, or whatever the example is. And what we're also seeing is where bigger groups might buy part of it and lease part of it. So the leasing option's fine, but sometimes people want more capital out than that, and they're looking to get a lump sum of capital so they can semi-retire or retire and still get an income from potentially a lease. So it's probably the combination does work.
Of course, it comes down to the parties being on the same page. There must be some sort of formula, tough questions that you always sort of ask at the start on both sides of the fence, just to see if they're aligned.
Absolutely, and it's probably about getting them to meet, having some good conversations. The best time that often is in the farm ute, having a look around and just seeing that the parties gel, and that someone's not in it for 5 years and someone's thinking 15, and those sort of things, and whether someone's wanting to do some capital development, as long as they need to be on the same page. If one's not wanting to do anything and the other one's wanting to do a whole lot, well, clearly you've got a problem. So generally speaking, that if you can have 3 or 4 meetings and there's a bit of a relationship built up, it certainly paves the way for a smoother transaction, really.
And what about governance? Your recommendations for people to think ahead, to see this structure actually have some security for both parties?
Yeah, I think the governance is one of the best things that come from some of these syndicates and equity partnerships we've put together, because there's clear guidelines. You do have regular meetings, you minute the meetings. People are held accountable for what they've said they'll do, and so the governance side of it works really well. And what it's also done though is it's meant that the younger couples primarily coming in, they're managing some of those things that the older farmer may not have wanted to, around maybe land and water, all sorts of environmental plans, all those sort of compliancy things that are coming into this farming thing are actually quite scary for an older generation, whereas the younger generation have been through Lincoln and university and they don't find it quite as daunting. So that's all built into the grand plan and the governance.
You must see the older farmers sort of have a bit of a bounce in their step as they move into another chapter, having young blood and energy around. What are some of the examples that, you've really enjoyed?
That's it. It's actually fantastic, and you could meet a few farmers that say that they've got a second wind. They often say that they love seeing their farm getting developed, where they've just run out of puff, but they've still got some ideas. And they just love sharing their ideas and their enthusiasm with the younger guys that are coming in and actually taking that farm to the next level with genetics and development. So I think it does give those, when you say about the average age is late 50s or 60, in a lot of cases it gives farmers another good 10 years where they're not actually having to crutch the sheep or do the hard yards, and they get far more enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for young people wanting to start planning towards sort of getting into a farm in, say, the next 5 to 10 years, how do you establish pathways for them?
Well, I think there's been some really good courses and some data done and on the Red Meat Profit Partnership website. There's some really good data on there around farm ownership. And I think these young guys and girls, they've just really got to put themselves out there. They've just got to talk to other farmers and rural professionals and make sure that everyone knows they're in the market and that they are developing the skills that they need to take that next step. And some of that, the biggest gap I see is probably around financial and accounting understanding. Like, you don't need to be an expert, but you do need to start understanding what a budget looks like and budget the actuals and what the numbers actually look like, because that's probably where the biggest weakness is, and that's where that Red Meat Profit and some of those courses are actually really valuable.
And with regards to what Rabobank's doing, what's sort of the next chapter for you, Brent, in the next 12 months to nurture some of this young enthusiasm?
Well, all our managers are always talking to the the younger generation looking to get ahead, and we run the Ag Pathways course, which we run through our client councils, and we're running one in Invercargill again this year. And of course, as I was saying, we're putting through 14 farmers through our farm managers program as a pathway, and we are having meetings with them on each other's farms prior to that, where they're getting quite stimulated about talking about their own examples and meeting other farmers that have been there and done that with what we've achieved. So it's not an easy process, and it's not something everyone's going to achieve, but the earlier you start, the more people you talk to and the more educated you get around what's possible, the more likely you are to achieve it, really.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Brent Irving, the National Farm Ownership Options Manager for Rabobank. And of course, get in touch with him if you are interested on either side of the fence, of the older generation, of course, keen, young and up and coming. Now, to finish off the show, coming up after the break, we're going to be joined by TAR Foundation spokesperson Willie Dooley and get a bit of an update from him on how it is progressing as Eugenie Sage orders the choppers into the hills for this eradication of the tar. And of course, leases could be forced to cull tar. This is Crown Pastoral leases. Look to be next, coming up next in Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
Rein in your minister. We've had enough of this.
Yep.
We're standing up for our democratic right to have a say.
Yeah.
We just want to see common sense, and let's get everyone back around the table and nut out a plan. Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah.
Bloody awesome. What a bloody waste.
Well, if you have been watching along live, you will have seen the video there of the protest. This is the hunter protest against the tahr cull that has gone forward and proceeded onwards into our national parks, despite the many vehicles that drove there in that sorry, my God, it's been a big day. As a new father, and then you've had all of this going on as well. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little jaded. It's been an interesting few weeks coming to grips with fatherhood, and we missed all our natal classes because of COVID, so we're sort of winging it, you know. But hey, it's going good, and I think we're 3 weeks in now, and every week is getting better, and we're getting a bit more sleep. But Ash, my partner, and I, we're doing shift work. She kind of does, you know, the 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. and then I do the 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. stint and then get stuck into some work during the day. So it's been pretty full on, along with this task stuff. So,
so where are we at as of Wednesday, the 29th?
Yeah, good question. I guess we don't exactly know. So I think since we last spoke, us, the Tahr Foundation, ended up taking the Department of Conservation to court. As you just mentioned, we won that on one of our grounds, which the judge ruled DOC didn't consult properly. I think last time we talked about their sham of a consultation process. It doesn't seem like government departments have to consult with all stakeholders in 2020. But unfortunately, although the judge ruled they didn't consult properly, he said in the meantime, you can still go and do half your control hours, which is 125 hours, which, you know, when they're shooting 30 tahr an hour, you do the math, that's a lot of dead tahr rotting on the hillside. And he also said, put no restriction on that. They could go and do it anywhere. And that a big thing for us was that we didn't want them shooting bulls in the national parks, because that's such an essential place for not only the thousands of recreational hunters that go in there and hunt bulls, you know, the bull tahr, they're an incentive for the rec guys to get in there, but it's also huge for the commercial guided hunting industry who take many bulls from there. So the really frustrating thing was, you know, that court case went ahead. We then reached out to DOC and said, hey, we know you're allowed to go and do half the hours. Please come and consult, and we'll work out a plan that reduces conflict, because there's a lot of things we agree on, and that's, you know, go stop this feral range of tahr. So outside the feral range, you know, they spread in a few areas, and we said, you know, go and spend some hours there, or work with us and we'll identify, you know, pockets of where there are too many nannies and juveniles, go and do some hours there. But they refused to consult, and they went straight into the national parks, and they've been shooting bulls non-stop for the last couple of weeks. So, you know, it's just sticking it to us hunters and a major kick in the guts.
I actually have just got a real pat on my tummy around, you know, helicopter safety. If they are so under the pump with the shortened amount of hours to get as much as possible, is there any assurance that, you know, everybody's going to be well looked after and not push it too much?
Well, I mean, yeah, we can't speak for the operators, but I mean, the frustrating thing is DOC never told anyone where and when they were doing this culling. They went straight in there. We've had reports from numerous guys, you know, they've spent thousands of dollars, come down from the North Island, they've gone into these places in the West Coast, they've flown in with James Scott, And they wake up one morning outside their hut, and there's helicopters blowing bull tar off the hillside all around them, within a K from the hut. And, there's a lot of snow now. Those bulls are setting off, the dead animals are setting off wet slide avalanches.
Jesus.
There's shooting happening all around people. It's a huge health and safety risk. And the fact the government, the department, DOC, didn't give anyone a heads up. They only told the local operators, the night before, hey, we're going to be shooting tomorrow. There's been hunters in there for days. No one had any idea where and when this was happening. It's just crazy that they can go ahead and do that.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm really shocked to hear that because, all it's going to take is one death. But, we're just currently having interviews on Sarah's Country all the time around, environment versus people in this current coalition. And so, therefore, what's the next step with the High Court?
So, well, at the moment, the High Court had its say, and it said, DOC, you need to consult with that second lot of 125 hours. So we're currently in the stage where we will be having another TAR liaison group meeting over the coming weeks. We don't know exactly when. We don't know how that will go. But I guess that's the frustrating thing is DOC is not keeping us in the loop. They're saying for safety reasons for the operators, they can't tell anyone where and what's happening. So we have no idea. We're the highest user of the parks, and we have no idea what's happening. We know legally they can finish their 125 hours, and they have to get back around the table with us for that remainder 125 hours. We'll try get a sensible outcome. Again, we'll try get them to do the science. The main issue that exists here is there's no science. They don't know how many tar there are. We don't know how many tar there are. How many tar is an acceptable number? No one knows. They've never done the science. They've never done the job of the Himalayan Tar Control Plan. That it laid some really good groundwork. It said, figure out that magic number, which is how many tar can our Southern Alps hold before there's an unacceptable level of browse. Again, it's not a rocket science thing. We just need to press pause. We've probably got the lowest population of tar we've had in years. They've just shot 18,000 tar in the last 3 years. So there's no conservation imperative for this. Again, it's just that Minister of Conservation, has a pet hate against tar. She doesn't like us as hunters. And the frustrating thing is, she's in that position of power. She's the Minister of Conservation. She needs to sit down, take into account everyone's views, and work out, a compromise, a middle ground. Even if that, we accept we're going to have a lowly populated herd of tar going forward. We accept that. We want to work towards that. But she's never sat down and said, hey, guys, this is where we need to get to. How can we collectively get there? How can we minimize the impact on your industries, on your livelihood? She's never asked us, how will this affect you? She just, grandstands saying, oh, there'll be plenty of tar left over. Meanwhile, she has no idea, how they've never set a limit on what they're going to shoot. They're just shooting until they run out of hours. They have no idea how it's going to affect us. She's never asked us. So that's the frustrating thing here is there's so much common ground. If she would just get around the table and actually, constructively work with us. So pretty frustrating. And tar are really just a start. It's pretty frightening what's coming all around the country.
Yeah, and there's the Conservation Minister, Eugenie Sage, that you're speaking about. She said here to Neil Wallace on Farmers Weekly, Neil Wallace has been doing some excellent articles in full-length detail. You can check it out on farmersweekly.co.nz. In speaking to Neil, that the herd's not going to be eradicated, and it has downplayed the economic significance of tar hunting, saying an average of 65 trophy animals a year have been shot on conservation land for each of the last 5 years.
Yeah, which is an absolute lie. Thousands of tar hunters head into those hills every year. The commercial hunting industry, take hundreds of bull tar. Each bull tar has shown that it injects $14,000 worth alone into the local economy. We're post-COVID. It's pretty frustrating. All we want to deal with is facts, with science, and work out, an adaptive management plan going forward. Let's actually put a plan in place rather than this willy-nilly boom and bust, agendas of the day. And when they tell so many, the blatant lies like that, misleading the general public who don't have skin in the game, it's really frustrating. All we want to do is work with them.
And what about this? Is this a lie that the police are investigating hunters' threats to DOC staff?
Again, obviously, right through this process, we've told hunters, you need to, I guess, play the ball, not the person. And we've told everyone, keep it clean. And, all we've seen is people being really well behaved. We organised the TAR protest. There's over 1,000 people there. Everyone was totally respectful. We've always said, DOC, and the helicopter operators, they're just doing a job. It's coming from Minister Sage. She's the one that's having these people do dirty work. So, we haven't seen any threats. We're not aware of any threats. DOC's never provided us with evidence of any threats. But again, when they marginalise, the hunting community, there's 166,000 people who go hunting every year. It's a big group of people. And when they don't, hear our voices, when they don't work with us, someone probably will say something silly. But I mean, even myself, on the other end of the spectrum, I've had, derogatory comments from Green members and conservationists, all through this process. So again, it's unacceptable if anyone's making threats, and it completely undoes our cause. We're trying to work constructively, get around the table. So again, in any group, there's always a small vocal minority who might say something silly, and we don't support that at all. But again, it does seem like it's probably more of a kind of a political grandstanding thing. And again, there's so many, things. If they work with us, if they told us where they're working, there'll be a lot less upset people. So again, there's a much better way of doing this.
And interesting that Alpine Helicopters in Wanaka have decided to withdraw their support of flying in this operation as opposed to any operation that seeks extermination. It's a tricky one, isn't it, Willie, because knowing a couple of the other helicopter operators as well that are involved, they've been hit hard with tourism, and this is a good source of a check over the winter period. So, I mean, being respectful to those pilots and those companies as well.
Yeah, totally. We get it's a hard position. I mean, we'd hope the operators would see the long-term game, which is, a lot of these same people are doing the culling. They fly in heaps of tahr hunting guys. They do a lot of heli hunting, AATH. So we'd hope they'd see the long-term game. Again, it's a hard position. We're all struggling post-COVID. So it would be hard to turn down. Again, it's not their fault. They're just doing a job, and if they weren't doing it, someone else would. And I guess their argument is they're saying, hey, we actually have an incentive to look after this tahr herd, so you better us hit doing it than, someone to come down from the North Island who has no interest in tahr and is going to shoot every single last one. So again, it's a tough one. I know there's a lot of angry people who are going to never use these helicopter operators again, who have gone in and culled bulls in national parks, and that's their own personal choice, and you can't blame them for that. So again, if these guys want to take the work, they've got to expect that there'll be a few people who will be a little upset and won't be using them. But again, we've really told everyone, don't take it out on the operators, don't take it out on DOC. They're just doing their job. All this lies with Minister Sage, sticking it to hunters. She hates introduced animals, and she's not prepared to work out a rational, common sense plan.
Yeah, absolutely. She hates introduced animals, and then she's moving further down the hill. Next is sheep, beef, and humans. And we'll be following through on this very closely next week, talking to Philip Todd-Hunter from Lake Heron Station, but also the chair of the High Country Catchment Group. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Willie. And that's all we've got for Sarah's Country tonight. And of course, we have been pre-recorded if you have only just joined us. So sorry if you have been sending in your questions and comments, but do please email me at any time, sarah@periummedia.com. And if you'd like to share any of these individual interviews, and you make sure that you jump on the podcast, Sarah's Country Podcast, and of course you can share from there or Farmers Weekly's YouTube channel. And of course we have dropped off Thursday shows if you had missed that as well. So we'll be back on Monday through Wednesday, as we work on developing a really cool new structure to our show come September. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight, wherever you have been watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you again on Monday. Good night and go well.
This